So we're back with another Radha Krishna Roundtable.
Hey, friends.
Back in the zone. I was thinking about how this last week I've been feeling much more relaxed after getting back from some travelings and trips, and it made me reflect on how busy things had been since like the movie touring and then the holidays, all the events squeezed into that, and then the retreat in Costa Rica to New York.
And Esalen.
And I felt a lot of anxiety. I was just thinking about how much anxiety I felt before and how little I feel now.
Okay.
And we're very self-rush. Like, it's easy for us as people to just be like, well, you know, we remember the most recent thing, which is like now. I'm like, yeah, well, maybe it's just always like this. I'll just I'll be low anxiety from now on.
Well, I hear you saying that you had a lot of anxiety, and I know you were saying at the time, before we went to Costa Rica and before we went to New York, that you had a lot of anxiety. But what I witnessed from you while you were saying that was that you were acting less anxious than you have in the past.
Yeah, I think I was dealing with it. Was that the right word? Dealing? I was experiencing it in a way that I wasn't spiraling, but it required honestly, it was confusing to like, why am I so anxious? And
How did that show up for you? How did you know you were anxious?
Well, it's a feeling in right here in my solar plexus of like, you know, that nervous heat turning in your stomach, and then also it's a feeling that I'm very, very familiar with from even like as a little kid when I first got into performing as an actor as a little kid and or anything where you had to inquire or whatever, where you're like, okay, I'm doing something in the public and I'm nervous. But this was like, it felt like maybe a new flavor. I think it was just a conflation of multiple things happening at once. Like entering into the ceremony space and the sort of concert space.
So the
publicly.
feeling in your stomach, would you have that like all the time? What was that like?
Yeah, a lot. It'd be kind of thing like you wake up and as soon as you remember, it's like boom.
You have a pit in your stomach.
Right, and I would pick it apart and be like, well, look, that's the future. And that's why you're feeling anxious right now. And I could untangle it and get back to the moment, and that would be the managing.
Would you have like what comes to mind for me is like, oh no, I've got to do this retreat. I've got this show.
Oh no, I'm East Forest. Yeah. Yeah. Oh shoot.
Is it like that? Kind of.
I mean, yeah, I'm joking, but yeah, it's a sense of like, of course, there's a flight response where you're like, part of you just like, I just want to run and hide.
Okay.
And you know, not deal. But of course, like, there's a part of you that wants to face the moment. I mean,
all right.
Anyway, I'm just remarking on how awesome it is this week to be just like a normal human being and not have something immediately coming up and be able to like just do normal things. Like I bought a basketball. I've been playing basketball in the park, and I'm just like, I have an hour to do that. Like, oh, it's so nice. Like, so nice.
I just looked. It looks like you haven't unpacked your gear, or you have?
Nope, haven't.
You haven't unpacked your gear, so that means you're not rehearsing in the mornings. You're making some music though. You've been making some music over there.
I'm mixing.
You've been doing some different things musically.
Mixing for Nadi and Mr. Nick Delfs, which I don't know if I've spoken about that. It's a record that I'm producing for Nadi and Nick Delfs. Nick Delfs, you can look up his music. He's really, really good indie musician and
very talented.
Yeah. Amazing releases over the years. He's been in some bands like Horse Feathers, and they're here in Boise. And his wife, Anadi, I don't believe has a release out, but maybe not under her name. And they have this amazing Hare Krishna music that is this really, really cool merging of like Nick's background, writing amazing. He's like plays everything kind of thing, like just really great songwriter, but then mixed with some traditional songs and her incredible voice. So they came to me to record a couple tracks, And I don't even want to know how long ago it was.
Couple years.
And I was
2 babies in.
Yeah, you got to keep turning this towards you. There you go.
Well, I don't like it. Feels like it's off center when you do that.
Well, it's just so you're directly going into the microphone. Anyway,
yeah. He's
they
moving
came
the microphone
here.
around for those that you can't see.
I just thought it was really, really special and great what they're doing. And so I offered to, if I could record all of it. And because I just wanted to help and make it as good as it could be. I think it's amazing. So we're getting into the final mixing. It's been a few years. They've had 2 babies. That's how long it's been. It's a good day. Anyway, I'll tell you more about that record when it's coming out.
But that's to say, you've been working on that musically this week. You're not working on your own
I had a
things.
window.
You're not
I had
rehearsing.
a window. Yeah.
And I hear it feels really good for you to have gotten through the ceremonies we did for the Mushroom Retreat in Costa Rica and then the big ceremony concert in New York for the release of Lovingly.
Yeah, I just feel it's almost like weirdly relieved, like too relieved, like almost like you were punched in the face, but it felt good. And now I'm just like, oh my God, is this real? Like, it's weird.
You're so interesting.
It's so weird.
Yeah. Well, I again just want to reflect. While you say you had this high level anxiety, you were acting more calm than you have in the past when you've had anxiety. Because, I hope this doesn't sound bad, but a lot of times when you get anxious, you kind of get a little mean and grumpy.
Yeah, I get short, curt. Yeah,
and
that can happen.
And you stayed.
That can happen.
You didn't really have that. I didn't feel because it's usually directed towards me.
No, I'm improving. Well, it's the whole world. Yeah.
And you've been great. For the most part, you've been awesome. You've been wonderful. So well done. Thank you for having that anxiety and still really being nice at the same time.
Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah, that was a haul. I mean, of course, this is all on top of everything going on in the world. Have you all heard? There's a few things going on in the world. I don't know. We're recording this February 23rd, 2025. So whenever it comes out, who knows what will have happened by then. So could be outdated. But it's been,
it's like 1 month since the inauguration of Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So 1 month in.
I was talking to Louis,
buddy.
Our dear friend and producer of Music for Mushrooms, and I was trying to think of a good name for Louis. He's kind of like an executive producer of the entire East Force project in a way. I don't know what the right term would be. He's my closest and oldest collaborator, but we're very involved. He's just he's more than just a
the term that comes to me is your best friend.
Well, he is my best friend, but in the project, it's like he's a major figure. I mean, I've said many times I wouldn't be sitting here if it wasn't for Louis.
He's the master producer.
Yeah, he's a manifesting generator, probably.
Oh, I don't know what his human design is.
Anyway, he was like, these days, since the inauguration, he's just like, are they still like watching movies and stuff? Because I feel like the only thing people want to talk about or learn more about, in a sense, is they're just trying to like get eyes on and understand what's happening, in a sense.
Politically.
Yeah, it takes up a lot of bandwidth. Well, I don't even know if politically is the right word. It's political, but it's also social / environmental / monetary / emotional. It's a lot. It's beyond just like being into politics. Like, oh, it's an election. It's just like hitting many facets of our lives. And for those of us that are paying attention or feel like we're oppressed, it is intense. So it is something that we've been talking a lot about, or certainly tracking every day. It takes up a lot of your brain cycles. Yeah. So how are you feeling about it?
Highly concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Moments of despair, rage, anger, grief, and resolve to take action and not go quietly.
You did do a couple things this week. You did multiple new things.
Yeah, I mean, since the election in November, you remember, I was like...
yeah, you were not happy.
Depressed-ish. Depressed as Rod again.
Depressed is a fair word.
And I think a lot of us were in a similar state of like non-action. Part of it is just coupled with its winter and the end of a cycle and a season holistically. Holidays. And so then coming out of that into the new year, and then really the inauguration and everything that's happened in the past month, that being like a big fire of the, like I said, like not going to go quietly, but then taking time to think, well, what is the most effective action and how can I be involved? And so I did go to the protests at the Boise Capitol on President's Day last week, which felt really good. I went by myself, showed up there, and there was probably about 1,200 people. It was a good showing.
For Boise.
Yeah, a lot for Boise. And then I joined the Idaho Abortion Rights Group that's doing a lot of work for one of the worst states for abortion rights. I wouldn't even say we probably have any abortion rights in this state, actually.
It's one of the worst for everything. It's like there's no medical marijuana. The abortion stuff is some of the worst. The anti-trans stuff is, I think, some of the worst.
I recently heard of statistics too from a woman in the Idaho Abortion Rights Group. She told me, and I'm going to get it maybe slightly wrong, but it's something like Idaho is the most women incarcerated in the nation for like minor offenses.
Like per capita, or it has to be per capita?
In the country.
Well, just because I think of places like New York State, places with higher population. Anyway, sounds bad.
Yeah.
Sounds bad.
And I'm involved in that now. And then I applied to volunteer for Agency for New Americans because Boise is actually a big refugee city. And so supporting the refugees that are coming, because I think I have a big soft spot in my heart for immigrants to this country, particularly refugees. And then joined a group too, a book club for this book called Strange Worship. That's all about Christian nationalism and how to fight
for it.
No.
And I joined. I gave myself to Jesus.
There's a difference between Jesus and Christian nationalism.
I know. I was going to go the next step there, but yeah.
So all of that feels good. And then sharing that with people too. Like I put a lot of resources out in my recent newsletter, and actually like a dozen people wrote back to say thank you for sharing and thank you for the tone of the newsletter, which was, I'm feeling upset. These are the things I've done. These are the things we could do. And my mission in life remains the same, which is how we can bring our bodies, minds, and heart into the highest state of wellness for self-awakening.
The highest state of wellness for self-awakening.
Something like that.
Well, I mean, that's a lot of things that you just got up to. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, I like I said, I don't want to go idly. And we'll just see what else continues to unfold.
That's funny because I just bought more ammo. No, I'm just kidding.
It's tricky for us. I'm sure some of your listeners are Trump supporters and voted for Trump. And I've talked to plenty of people who are like, there's nothing wrong at all with what's going on and what's the big deal and woohoo RFK and things like that. So I know some listeners are in that side of things. And, RFK, yes, he has some good ideas about things we're all aware of that aren't healthy for us as a country or individuals or society. But I can't help but not feel or perceive him energetically as 100% con man. Like I know con men so well.
You want to talk RFK?
How I was raised that I cannot get behind him because it's like everything in my being is red alarms of total con man. Yeah,
there does seem to be some lapses of judgment within the last, I don't know, if you look at his career and where he went and just sort of this desire for recognition and fame, something's happened in the last something's happened in the last handful of years with a lot of people.
Oh, yeah.
Like friends,
and
but certainly in higher places as well. I mean, Elon Musk is another example. But the tough thing about RFK, and I'll be totally honest, a lot of these initiatives is like there are aspects where there's truth, or it's like, for instance, is there bureaucracy bloated? Yeah, sure. Is it inefficient? Yes. Is the pharmaceutical company and the medical system at times working against us? Yeah. I mean, all these things.
Has the government lied to us or misled us?
Yeah, so it's sort of like, but why do we have to go so far that's like throwing the baby out with the bathwater? And, it's like, it's this whole thing about not being able to hold nuance, or not being able to hold concurrent truths, or even not knowing everything and trying to make your best educated guesses sort of things, which is a lot of how life is, as opposed to like, it has to be this or it has to be that. It's like you're cheated or you're not, you're a winner, you're a loser. And it's just too simplistic, especially for this world. So, I want more than anything for us to get healthy again as a country, no doubt. And I don't disagree that a lot of the systems we have are just like feeding this machine that is more, the fact that we have a for-profit medical system, that is the thing, which I think is almost impossible to change, but that's the thing we should change.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like cutting it at the root.
In the hearing, when Bernie asked RFK, like, do you think everyone should have access to health insurance or medical care? He couldn't even answer yes to that.
Yeah, it's like one of these things. Like, do I want the private insurers to get richer? No. But look, here's an example. We've heard through people we know who work as doctors and nurses that they're working to undermine those systems, wanting those federal workers or who are federal to quit too. And you might initially think like, well, how does that help? That's just going to make the business crappier, or they're not going to have a good service for the people who are coming there. And that is the point.
That is the point. They
so
want
that they
to
go to
privatize.
private insurers so that they make more money, the private insurers.
Or so that all the systems become privatized. Education,
it's
hospitals.
Still corporate profit.
Yes.
And I'm saying that, and I don't think that's gone very well for us in the healthcare industry to think that like, oh, we'll just give more money to
Where
health
has it gone
insurers.
well? Where has it gone well for a corporation to solely run something that is a basic need? Where's it gone well? Can you think of anything?
I don't even want to make that assertion like it's gone well or not gone well. It's like there are certain ways that like corporations, there are advantages to capitalism, there are disadvantages. Like sometimes it drives down prices, sometimes it creates competition, but also sometimes then it's all about the shareholders making money at the destruction of the entire earth. Like there's
a lot of that.
So it's not as simple for me as like, oh, we shouldn't have corporations or something like that.
I'm not saying we shouldn't have corporations.
So I can't just say like there's never or there has been good examples of corporations, I feel like they're probably mixed bags, and I'd have to think about it.
But so nothing's coming to mind off the top of your head.
Well, someone who shops at Walmart, which I don't, might say like that is a corporation that I'm glad exists because I get a cheaper price, but that's not exactly helping things or the planet to have Walmart around, right? And some of the richest people on the planet are in that Walmart family and supergroup, which we never really talk about them, by the way. They're right up there in the top 10, the Walmart folks.
That's probably by design by them.
Well, they're smart because we're not talking about them. We're talking about the others, But corporations that have worked out, is that the question?
No. It's like taking essentially what's occurring or what's trying to be forced through is making public education no longer public. It's all private.
Yeah.
Making
the idea that it would be better. Yeah.
Yeah. If it's privatized versus public and open.
Well, look at when we've done that with prisons, or I don't know. Look, it's just to say that like there could be an in between where what if we tried to improve like existing systems as opposed to just handing them over? I think it's hard to get them back.
I think there are in betweens, and that's the thing that's sort of working now is that there are options of in betweens.
Like
if
Medicare.
we just stay with education, it's like there's private school, there's public school, there's charter schools. You have options.
There's homeschool.
There's homeschool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We had this.
And with there being a variety, it keeps the checks and balances.
Probably. It just goes back to choice and freedom. But it's like, why? I don't know. Why haven't we been able to figure out as a country things like gun control that's sensible and healthcare that's sensible. Like most other countries have figured out, whether or not it's working perfectly, they have figured out systems for that work better, way better than ours. And that's very frustrating that we can't even just figure that out. So it's sort of saying, like, make us healthy again. I'm sure RFK understands, too. I would assume that it's like, well, this is about the food lobby and the farm bill, not just the pharmaceutical industry, the way what you're taught in medical schools, the fact that we have food deserts out there, the way even grocery stores are structured. Then it's just like the economy itself and what people can afford, and then whether or not we even go to get things checked out when we have problems, which a lot of us can't or are afraid to. I mean, when we were in Costa Rica, we kept walking by this health clinic, and I ended up having to go in there because I had an earache, essentially. And they ended up pulling a whole bunch of wax out of my ear, which was like this amazing, amazing thing. Instant relief.
It was one of the most disgusting things I've seen in my entire life.
Water trapped in the ear. But point is, we're in there and we suddenly realized this place offers a lot of services. I mean, I think they had dental services. And
we both got a cleaning.
Yeah, we immediately were like, because it was just like, this is drastically less expensive.
Well, what the beauty was, we could walk in, say we'd like a help with this specific thing, and their reply was, sure, we'd love to help you right in this moment. Here's a simple form. Here's a very clear, low rate fee, and we're done. Yeah,
cleaning was $100. It's not like that's like maybe a lot less in the States, but it is than a lot of places. And it was just simple.
To get your ear flushed was $100.
Yeah, and that was like
that saved
life
your life.
Or death at the moment. It was horrible. Yeah. Anyway, I think one of the challenges is that we're enraged by the all or nothing approach that feels like it's going on inside a world that not only is collapsing and in some ways needs to collapse, like systems need to break down, but there's not a real cogent response about the replacement. There isn't a sense of compassion or care. It's more just, it feels punitive. It feels like we're just breaking things down to break it down. And there's not much ability to say, this part is working, this part isn't. We're going to a sophisticated response. It just feels like such and such is evil and we're going to kill it. And that feels very immature, frankly.
That is immature.
Yeah. And I think that Trump wants to take Greenland because he thinks it's going to be one of the only places we can live in the future as the United States. Everyone's going to have to move there.
Canada.
Yeah, and the northern states. Idaho might be okay up in the mountains. Good luck with Canada. That's not going to happen. The Canadians are not going to...
It feels like, the game of Risk, which I only actually played like maybe once or twice as a child. But it feels like throughout our lifespan, the game of Risk has been fairly stagnant.
Yeah, since World War II.
Right?
Yeah.
So things haven't really shifted. Things have somewhat, but not greatly. And it feels like we're on the cusp of things getting shuffled around again, which I think I know personally took for granted, the sense of this is just the way things are. Everybody's got what they need.
Global stability.
We've all agreed you've got this
shifted.
thing.
Yeah. It's very true. And I'm going to go a step further and say, it's not shifting. It's shifted. We're not going back. It is a new era. It is a new era. And I think that's a little hard for people to accept because for me, it's hard to accept. But if you kind of say okay, it's new territory here. We can't now be opining for we just got to get back to X, Y, Z. And I think in some ways that's good. It's good because the system before was certainly top heavy. But I think we're also recognizing the realities, of what does it mean? America being the police force since World War II. Yeah, that had a lot of problems. But what happens when we don't do that? I don't think we've ever all considered the other side of it too. Who steps into these power vacuums?
I think in some ways for the past couple decades, we've been pretending to do it. But that's more of a show.
It's been all for our economic colonialism and more than that too. But
and
it's been a mess.
It is a mess.
But we still held that role.
Sure, but
And
it's like a smoke and mirrors type of role.
The military aspect was pretty real. Like, not just holding like merchant marine lanes in the oceans with the biggest navy in the world and like bases everywhere. I mean, it has a huge bad aspect to it, but the good aspect was more just like we were there, so people were like, well, we can't do X, Y, Z because, and it's crazy to think that like what we're calling stability since World War II with all the wars and all the death that happened. But it's sort of like we haven't had a nuclear situation. We've had near misses many times. And everyone thought that was just going to happen. Still could. But there's so many crises now that America is so unprepared for anyway, whether it's economic or environmental, of course. But the geopolitical one, it's just nutty. There's nothing wrong in my mind with saying that we need to have maybe like Europe step up in NATO and help, but it's like it's not the same thing to just be like, and we're out, peace. It's like, you know what I mean? Again, it's like there's no middle ground, there's no like nuance, there's no long-term transition, there's nothing. It's crazy. So anyway, I don't know if people want to hear us talk about politics or whatever you want to call this, but it's been on our minds. It's been on a lot of people's minds.
Yeah, and I'm sure for some listeners we talk about it very inartfully and make mistakes, but this is just us kind of like trying to make our way through the weeds.
Much. Like everyone, we're just getting all this information and
trying to make our way through
in
the
our
muck.
heads. Yeah.
But I bring it back to like that's kind of all in a way like out there and these ideas and on a larger scale. So it's bringing it back home to what's important and what matters. And I think it was just maybe yesterday where I was feeling so grateful just to be home with you and home with Benji, and we have time together and, sharing meals and sharing relaxed time and just that the groundedness of that.
I think that's what I was saying at the beginning.
Helps me so much.
Yeah.
Helps me. And I don't take it for granted. I'm so grateful. Like, I think this is what it was. I was driving in the car with Benji, taking him back from his soccer game and just thinking to myself, I'm so grateful to be driving him home from his soccer game because he won't be a little boy forever. We won't have these moments forever. And it's going to all pass and shift. And there's such, in a way, luxury and freedom in our life right now, even if it feels like chores. But I'm just so grateful for the simple things. So bringing it back to the simple things in our smaller circles and my own practices, because that's what's going to get us through is our own connection to the light or source or the other, while everything else falls apart and is chaotic and scary and harmful. You've been saying it forever, and I didn't like it when you would say this, but during the pandemic, early 2020, which is 5 years ago now, you would say, things are going to get a lot worse. That's one of your phrases.
I think I say that before a lot of events.
Yeah.
So it's true.
Well, I know, and it's scary, and I don't think you're wrong, but I think you're right. I think you're right. Things are going to get a lot worse. So in these moments, I'm so grateful that they haven't yet. And the way to navigate through worse is your own heart, really, when things are going to get worse.
Yeah. Here's another way to look at it. Like we're brave souls who have incarnated in a time of total transformation on our planet, and that is honorable. And we are all capable of handling what comes our way because we chose it and we're part of its design and its execution, and we're needed in that regard. But I absolutely think like the way our world is so interconnected, and I mean, COVID was a great example, but just everything, supply chains and everything, that the way, as much as it needs to break down, it has to cut really deep, and it hasn't hardly done any of that. It's done a little bit. And it's just sort of more like inevitable. It's going to have to keep going. But that includes revolutions in technology like AI and how that's going to be disruptive. It's all tied together too. I mean, there's not to go back into the politics thing, but clearly there's an aspect from these tech folks thinking, rightly or wrongly, that a lot of these jobs in the government would just be replaced by AI. And we want to have control over that and make all the money and so forth and so on. And that may be true whether I like it or not. My point is that it's just so gross how they're going about it and nefarious it feels like. But these sort of revolutions will cut to the bone. And that's why we have been saying for a long time that building up your inner fortitude feels like one of the best things you can do for yourself now, because being familiar with that muscle and that candle, that flame within, that is critical. We need as many of those people on this planet that can just sort of like hold that energy for the planet and for each other. We need it now. We need it all the time. But I know that seems like the central mission.
You know, like in a psychedelic journey, when you have those moments of like peak absorption.
Absorption?
You know
like
what
a
I
peak
mean?
moment?
Like a peak absorption, meaning like you are in absolute, let's say, bliss. And it's like, your sense of individual identity dissolves, right? And you're holding that. But the moment that your mind remembers something else, whether it's like curiosity, like what's next or what's this, or I need to go to the bathroom or whatever it might be, that the oneness moment kind of breaks down and falls away. Have you had that experience?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So
hey, that might have been the central teaching from that first ayahuasca.
Oh, okay. But to your point of like holding the focus, I think what we need to do in our practices is practice holding a focus on something. Like that's what meditation is. You pick one thing to focus on without that, your stream of consciousness getting distracted. And so the longer you can hold that non-distracted state lasered in, the longer you're there. And then that power gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It amplifies. And being able to hold that for the light, really, while things get destructive and chaotic and there's a lot of suffering around, your ability to be able internally to return to that point of focus and really hold it.
I was listening to Krishna Das, his podcast yesterday while I was shooting hoops. For real. And he was talking about, I'm going to get this wrong, but that when you drop into the heart, that is valuable for the universe. Like every time you do that, that is, it's almost like polishing the mirror of the universe, or another seed is implanted every time.
It's a ripple.
And it's valuable and it's important. And it's kind of what you're saying, for us not even to think about like the amount or the time. And we've also heard about when your mind comes to one place, that's when the doorway opens. That's kind of like the same thing in the psych. Like you're really amplifying that in a psychedelic experience and feeling it and seeing it. And that is most definitely a radical act these days. I think about a lot.
What's a radical act?
Doing one thing at a time.
Yeah.
I think what's counterculture. I ask people a lot about this. Like, I'm like, what do you think is counterculture?
Okay, well, shame on you then for basketball and podcast. You got to adjust basketball.
You're right. I mean, not shame on me, right?
I know.
But
I'm not actually
you're right
trying
that
to
I
shame
wasn't
you.
doing a radical act.
But it could have been. Like when you and I we played basketball the other day, you weren't listening to a podcast.
No, you were there, too. I was talking to you.
Yeah,
That'd be amazing if I was like, that's what Benji does to us. He's always got like an AirPod in while he's talking to me.
You can share a moment of presence with another if both people are doing the one thing together.
Of course. Just
like
being
sex.
outside, and I like sex. It was like an hour before sunset. It's winter, but it was a sunny day, and there's not many people around, but it's like really beautiful light. And the basketball court outside in the park, it's like just asphalt, and there's some snow patches and leaves. It's kind it just felt so, I hate to say this, like real. Like it was just felt so rich. Just standing there and just bouncing the ball and looking at the leaves on the ground and the snow patch and I do think a lot about what is counterculture, because I think a lot about, we talked about this too, like where things were 15 years ago, before 2012, where the psychedelic movement and so forth was more naive, or not naive, innocent, cohesive, simple.
Not
simple.
Covered in garbage. When the psychedelic movement wasn't covered in garbage.
And so here we are, and I was asking Leor Roseman on our podcast about, are psychedelics, like, are they just mainstream? Are they no longer counterculture? And we were kind of in between. Like, in some ways, no, and in some ways, they still are. And that's a crazy thought. You know, what would it mean to you if psychedelics, we could just agree in some way, like they're not counterculture at this moment in time?
They're not. I do agree with that.
Really? Oh, I don't carte blanche think that. I think it's kind of half and half.
I do. I absolutely do. I do.
Well, then that means they're just serving the culture.
They are serving the culture.
The culture is not your friend, says Mr. McKenna.
Or we are part of the culture, whether we like it or not. I think of counterculture as something that goes against, right, the word counter.
Breaking the dream versus feeding the beast is my main sort of definition. Like, you know, one is like fighting the man in a sense, and the other is like you're just helping, you know, Soma, putting people to sleep.
I think some of it is. I think some psychedelics are absolutely putting people to sleep.
Or the use of them in particular ways.
Yeah, like
I don't think there's an inherent badness or goodness.
But even like internally, I'm thinking of like my analogy also is yoga, right? Like yoga is not counterculture. At one point in time, it certainly was. And now there's a lot of garbage in yoga too, and just like super ego, like
but it
spiritual
can be.
bypass. But let me finish. But even within that, if somebody's doing yoga for only the superficial reasons, because of the power of it as a technology, even if they're unaware of it, they're still incrementally awakening. Same with psychedelics. While there's still their own ego delusion with yoga or other forms of spirituality or psychedelics, it's still shifting things towards awakening a little bit.
That's kind of what Leor, I think, was saying, in that they still contain these elements that that dissolve in a way. And you can stunt them or use them in ways that you're not, like, you know, I don't know, you get like the Russell Brands of the world or something, where it's like, it really is kind of a snake eating its own tail. That, though, is not just the psychedelics and so forth. I think it's largely actually the Ouroboros type reality tunnels of social media, of you get these tunnels or feedback loops of information.
People's egos just get so huge. They're so self-centered and they don't even realize it. The thing that happens with psychedelics or yoga or spiritual awakening is usually in the beginning, you have a very authentic sense of, this is so powerful and I want to share it with others. My boyfriend could use it and my mom could use it and my friends could use it because it was meaningful to you. But then you take on this savior complex of like, I have the answers and I'm going to help everybody. And now I'm going to make it my career and I'm going to become this helper because I've touched into a place authentically within myself that has that purity of being. And then they mistakenly think that that's their reality or their truth all the time when they're just beginning to work on their neuroses. And then they're just putting that on everybody. Yeah. And so blindly, there's so much blindness to the self in these wellness spheres. It's really just embarrassing.
That you can love people without trying to influence them.
Yeah, because that's inherently a power complex.
Yeah,
Is I have the answer for you.
Right. Right. And if agape consciousness or love is perhaps the goal, then that's not about getting everyone to believe what you believe or get on any sort of team. It's actually just to love what is.
Totally.
It's total compassion and acceptance, actually.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Yeah.
So,
like my siblings. None of my siblings, mostly at all, I don't think any of them think the same things I do politically or about consciousness of the world. And I'm not trying to change any of them. And I still love them. And we're still all in relationship.
They live mostly in Florida, so good luck with that. No.
Good luck with what? Oh, changing them? No,
yeah.
I'm not. There's not even a thought that I would. And that's okay. You know, we're living with those differences.
And it's okay. Yeah, it's like you don't need to change them.
No.
Yeah.
No. But if they were to ever come to me, like with anybody, if anybody were to come to me and say, hey, could you help me out with this thing or tell me more about blank, I'd say, you bet. Let's do it.
Yeah. So when I think about, what is counterculture, another way of looking at that is like, what is helping in a way? Of course, there's my judgment in there about a direction I want to see things go.
Well, that's also saying that counterculture always helps.
Well, I think when the culture is destructive, it is. Yeah. And I think currently it is destructive. But there's this part of me that's recognizing that if things need to change, can they change from within or do they need to just fall apart and be rebuilt? And again, there's no blanket answer there.
Here's one idea of what's counterculture. Like the younger kids, like the kids Maya's age, my daughter, she's in her early 20s, them wanting to get off of screens.
But are they?
The desire is there, and they're going more analog in some ways.
Okay. I mean, sure.
Would you say, if that were true, if people like the desire to go analog, is that counterculture?
Absolutely. It's because our attention there's so much influence and information, our attention is so hijacked that that's probably one of the biggest things you could do, but it's very difficult to do.
Or get off social media. That would be counterculture.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, doing anything that's more human, anything that's more in real life, all that stuff. I mean, I truly think things that were not counterculture before, like listening to one song at a time and just listening, that is now counterculture.
Album.
That is now counterculture.
Listening to one album. On the soccer mom, when I do that, it's like a 30-minute drive carpool, and I thought, like, I'm going to be the cool mom and play for the boys one album of something that's just like awesome and classic, and they're gonna love it, and they hate it. They hate it.
What'd you put on?
Well, I started with like Weezer, the Blue Album. I'm like, this is one of the best albums of all time. And while they might like it, the concept of listening to like quote unquote the bad songs, they're like, why would you listen to this song? It's not a good song. They only want to hear the good songs.
Oh,
like
do they know them?
That's just what they said.
Telling you, like, just give us the highlights.
Yeah.
Cliff Notes life.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, we're entering into like Cliff Notes as the reality world.
So now I don't play full albums. I'm giving them what they want. I feed the beast.
I mean, what does it mean when AI has any information we need? In the same way, we don't use maps the same way. Now we just use digital maps and they tell us where to go. And before you had to know how to read maps. And in the future, you don't really need to know anything, especially when you have general consciousness with artificial intelligence. And it's just how to use that tool. And some people be like, I don't need to remember anything. I don't need to even understand any subject really, because it's like...
How many numbers do you think you can hold in your brain in a row and remember?
Like in this moment?
Yeah.
I don't know, 8.
Oh, okay.
12, I don't know.
12.
I don't know. I'd have to, if I could write them down and put them into groups of 4, I could do a lot more.
Okay. If you had a strategy.
Yeah, like a credit card number, I can go pretty far.
Okay.
But,
or a phone number.
And it's a muscle that it's like learning lines for a play. Like if
do
you
you
did
try
that a
to
lot,
do that?
No, because I don't need to remember. I mean, I know your phone number. And I think that's like surprising to most people.
Don't say it out loud.
Yeah. Oh. But nobody calls anyone. Don't worry about it.
I'm not going to pick up.
Yeah. I do not just do random memory exercises like that, except for with music stuff I do, of course. But Yeah, I'm actually on the verge of that right now. I'm trying to. Just talking about it brings up anxiety, but about remembering certain things in live performance and the muscle memory of it. And
What's the thing in your recent dates that you had performing that you screwed up the biggest? What was your
what do
biggest
you mean
mistake?
screwed up? What are you
I'm just
talking
asking.
about?
It could be anything.
Nothing.
Nothing.
There's no big screw ups. I mean, it's just. I mean, you hit wrong buttons, and that's happened a bunch.
So you hit the wrong buttons a few times.
I've killed sound. And,
You killed sound.
And yeah, and sometimes people think it's just like, wow, that's a bold move.
Did you do that in Salt Lake? Remember Salt Lake? Did you hit something and like everything went quiet?
No, we weren't. It wasn't Salt Lake. It was where was it? Esalen or something? I don't remember. Yes, but it was somewhere. I remember it being a really friendly audience.
Yeah, you totally played it off. It was great. Salt Lake was fine. The people there were wonderful, but the venue was weird.
I guess we should just say to those who came to the Salt Lake show, we did not know that you. I mean, it was a surprise to me too afterwards when I heard that they wouldn't let anyone sit down, let alone do anything else. So they made you stand, holding a yoga mat and stuff with plenty of room.
Yeah, you and I came to that show thinking we were doing a ceremony concert. We were fully prepared to offer a ceremony concert.
Keep talking. I got to write a note to talk about that for upcoming dates. I just have to remember, like, it sounds obvious, and I'd never encountered that before.
Yeah, we had never encountered that. We'd never gone to a venue that was so strict about people sitting down or being comfortable. So it was a total shock to us in the moment, not what we were prepared to walk into. And I think it wasn't what the guests wanted either. So apologies.
Anyway,
and we
do our best. It's not in our control, but something like that,
we made an assumption.
I just never asked. Yeah,
that was the assumption.
I've never seen that. Yeah. Anyway.
I just asked that question because I was thinking about you just getting through things, like that resilience and fortitude.
The thought comes up in my head when I get really nervous and anxious like that. Like maybe that is a sign I need to just retire. I'm serious. You're laughing. But it's like, well, maybe. It's not good for you to be that anxious.
You always have been this way, though.
But I'm,
since you said in the beginning, since you were a child.
It feels different. And I don't know if I'm just like, it's my memory getting skewed. Maybe it hasn't been different.
I witnessed you being calmer.
I used to do plays that were crazy. The kind of things that I had to do that were so like really putting myself out there, but I had no choice. And you're like, man, I really, really don't want to do this. And you do it and you get through it. And I've done that so many times. You think at some point, you'd be like, oh, I got this. I figured it. But you don't.
All right. Well, here's the question. If you were to retire and take out performing in all of its forms completely, what would you do? What would your new phase be?
Would there still be public events of any kind? Like
nothing that makes your stomach turn.
Oh. Well, weirdly, when I play music in a yoga class, which is rare these days, because I'm behind a teacher, I'm not nervous at all.
Okay,
I don't feel like it's on me.
So we could go on the road.
I also think if I was in a band, I'd be less nervous. If there's this other people, there's something really unique about being by yourself and making all the sound and all the eyes are on you.
When you played a couple times with Peter Broderick, what was your anxiety?
It was great.
You felt great?
Yeah, I love those shows in Japan and London and stuff. Love that stuff. Love it.
Okay, so a solution could be...
I have thought of it, yeah.
Finding you some...
Even one person. But a
bandmates.
band would be amazing. Or just players. It just feels like now we're doing this together. Absolutely. But that's tricky for a lot of reasons.
Your plays, when you used to get a lot of anxiety, wasn't that with other cast members?
Yeah, and that's why I'm saying I'm trying to feel like I don't remember getting nervous the same way, and that might have been why.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm just trying to like remember and piece things together. Even like my old shows pre-East Forest, it was a band. And so you're just responding to someone else making sound, and you're kind of like, it's literally not just on you.
You have an old story. You have a false belief locked in your psyche that is something like number one, part of it is like people aren't going to like what I play, right? Like it's not going to be good. Is that in there a little bit?
I used to think that coming from the medicine space into the public space wouldn't function unless people were on medicine.
Okay.
I was like, I don't think it'll be as interesting, and I was afraid of that judgment early on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a piece of that there. And then there's always like, I think people have like imposter syndrome feelings,
right,
where you're just like, well, maybe they'll find me out, or I'm not, I'm not the real this or that, or
I'm not really.
I have some tricks
artist.
here. It's like,
yeah. So when the spotlight's just on you, you're more vulnerable in that way of they're going to find me out, and if they don't like this, the only thing they're not going to like is me. Versus if I'm in a band, it might be the drummer or the singer.
You can always blame the drummer.
So if you didn't feel. If you didn't have the belief, or let's say if you had the belief like what I offer is amazing and I'm a professional and people like it, you might not be as nervous.
Look, sweetie, yes. And I have those feelings too. There's a lot holding at once, and I work with it. And I'm not sitting there like in a soup of only just this negativity. Actually, I balance it with overwhelming feelings of like, yeah, like, there's things I like to say to my scared part of me, like, you are needed just as you are. You are held. You are masterful. It's like you've done this many, 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 many times, and this will be fresh and new, and that's good. It could be fun, and a lot of times it is fun.
And even if you hit the wrong button, it's fine.
Yeah, that too. It's like it's all good. It's all good. Honestly, I've seen shows where people design into it quote unquote mistakes so that the audience feels like they're seeing process and they're like, we're now closer.
Yeah.
And I've seen them do it on purpose, and I asked them why, and they're like, yeah, that's why. Mm-hmm. And they're not wrong. There's psychology to like
likability. It's like the underdog. They want to root for you.
It's kind of like being at a dinner party, and you say something. You're kind of asking for deference from your friends, like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then when they give it to you, they feel they have a little power, and they're like, "Oh, I gave you something." Like, "Oh, he's hurt. I'm gonna help him." Like, you got close. You're closer. You're closer now, and so it does create a kind of intimacy, in a sense, and that's what live things are so great about, because ultimately, I hope you feel like you're in the room together, and you're helping something happen together. That's special, and I think that's more and more and more and more special as we're moving through this era of everything becoming digitized. Yeah. So we've been talking about, because the Lovingly album came out, and making some plans. I think this is coming up because we're talking about the year and even into 26 about touring and dates. And I'm moving forward with that, but I'm well aware of like, not just like how that might feel energetically, but also where the world's going. And it's a wild thing. And I'm filled with gratitude at the same time. It's like I was saying at the beginning of it's okay to hold a lot of even divergent feelings at once.
Well, we are doing that.
Yes.
Very
people, sometimes I think you
multidimensional.
feel like, oh, it's got to be, I have to figure it out. It's one or the other, and it's not like that.
Mm-mm. Balance is always shifting. We're always moving. We're always like, it's very dynamic. Life is so dynamic. It's a little bit of this, it's a little bit of that, all the time.
Yeah.
Engaged, not engaged. Pleasure, pain. Life, death. Here, there.
Blip, bloop, blop, blip. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Afraid and despondent and grateful and grounded. All that can coexist at the same time.
Yeah. Like in some ways, I feel more clear than I've ever been, and more like...
Oh, I got a question for you.
Sure.
Saying that you're more clear than you've ever been, do you think anything that has to do a little bit with you being sober from alcohol?
I don't know. That's a good question. Because I never felt, when I would drink, I liked having beer or margarita and stuff. I usually have 2 or 1. rarely would I have more. And if I did, it'd be like 3. So I can count the number of times in the past 10 years where I woke up feeling hungover. It's not that many, but that just meant maybe like my body tolerated it pretty well or in a certain way. So me not drinking was mostly because of like feeling heartburn and getting ready for some ceremonies.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually stop drinking anyway, and other things too, before ceremonies. But this one, I just decided, I'm kind of sick of it anyway. We've been talking about it for years.
You went through the whole holiday season without any alcohol.
Yeah.
Like before Thanksgiving, you stopped.
Yeah, and
so
I gave
props to
myself
you. Just because you wanted to, really.
And I said to myself, like, I mean, if you want to have a drink, have a drink. It wasn't even like, I can't. I was like, I guess you can.
Yeah, you
and
were very relaxed.
And because of that, I always would ask myself in that moment, like when I had like, oh, maybe I would do it. And I think about it, like, do I really? And I'm like, not really. I don't really. And so I just be like, well, then, all right, then go to tomorrow. And after this long, I think, actually, oh my God, I had a dream last night. I was having some scotch or something and thinking like, well, it's fine. You have a drink. Doesn't mean I'm going to have it all the time. No, I just had it. No, but it's not, it's just being like loose, but it's kind of turned out.
Well, now it's been 3 months since you've had any alcohol and you're doing great. So when you said, I'm feeling really clear, maybe.
I think my singing's better.
Huh.
And I think that might have something to do with like acid in the stomach and things like that, and sleeping maybe a little better. And because that affects your vocal cords. And I felt a little, I don't know, stronger. There's other things that are silly and technical that I think have affected it too. But
you're singing, you mean?
Yeah, things I've been doing like with microphones and so forth and monitoring. But nonetheless, the last few times when we were in Costa Rica and New York and some others, I just felt like a little more freedom and control that I was appreciating.
Your voice has sounded great.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Talk about imposter syndrome. That's one where I often have a lot of stuff going on.
Do you get sweaty? Does your body respond?
No, only like that's only like in stress situations. Like there's a situation, like when we were, I don't even like talking about them.
What?
Oh, like when we were in Poland and the entire audience is sitting there, we're trying to figure out before I couldn't start.
That was
like,
really
I get a little sweaty
stressful.
in those situations.
Yeah, I get sweaty before I sing and play harmonium for a class.
I thought you were going to say alone.
No. Alone, it's
for
fine.
Pepper the dog.
Yeah, no, but when I do it for my students, I'm like, everything just gets on fire.
Yeah. I get nervous. Okay, there's different things, but like for public shows where it's like, quote unquote, people are looking at you, like New York. When I first walk out, there's a rush and adrenaline. Mm-hmm. That's just the classic, like your heart's going faster and you're just trying to be calm.
Yeah, and then you're trying to be cool at the same time. That's how that comes across for you.
So it shows that I'm nervous?
No, it shows that you're trying to be cool.
Point is, there's a rush. It's hard to not have that, the adrenaline rush when you just walk out. But then like when you move into it, I can get like weirdly calm. And actually there have been many times lately that I feel like I'm too calm. Like I'm in the middle of a thing and I'm like, bro, you are way too relaxed right now. Like you stop for a second. It's like, it's just strange. You're like, okay, all this is happening and these people are here and you're doing the thing and you need to get a little more like...
Do you think that that's really true, though?
There are moments where I feel like
I think it's true
relaxed.
that you feel really relaxed. My question is, do you think it's true that you're too relaxed and you need to get agitated?
No, but I think there's a thought in my head that's like, is it okay that you're this relaxed? Like, this is a heightened situation.
Yeah,
and you're just kind of... I think it's just the brain being like, yo, everything cool? Everything cool? Are we cool here?
Yes, you are. Because you're a professional. You're masterful. You know what you're doing. It's going well.
It is a good feeling because it feels like when you're relaxed like that, it's kind of a flow thing, I suppose.
Flow. That's what I was imagining. It's like you've caught the wave. You're surfing. You're...
one thing that's really nice about when people do lie down or a yoga class or even a ceremony, I don't feel like the literal focus is on me, like they're looking at me. It's more just on like the vibe in the room, and it lets me relax in more ways. Versus when you're doing a show, there's that element of visual performance.
Totally.
Which you can
They
forget
are.
about. When we're doing a
Watching
ceremony and it's dark in the room, I mean, obviously, that's gone. I'm fully, does not matter.
You got a little too relaxed once in Costa Rica too, and I remember poking, and you'd be like, "No, you can't do that right now."
What are you talking about?
I don't know if you want me to say it out loud.
What I was,
You were like sitting there, like eating nuts.
oh, that's because we were in a break. I wasn't playing.
Still, it was something, and I was like, "You can't. Everybody
Listen,
can watch you eat
sometimes
right now."
after
on stage.
third ceremony, you're in 4 hours in. I need to sit
ceremony.
down and get horizontal and get a few calories in.
That was the
truly.
first one.
I would feel myself like bonking, and it was an amazing, like, I would eat something and have water and some electrolytes, and then I remember I went back to playing. I felt like a different person. I was like, oh, it's pretty simple. You need nutrients.
Yeah, you do.
When you go on that long. Well, we should wrap it up. We've been going about an hour.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Radha Krishna
anything
Roundtable.
else you want to put out there? I mean, the timeline on this is questionable when it will come out.
You are
But
gonna
Treefort.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You're playing for me for Treefort Music Fest here in Boise, Idaho. Sunday, March 30th. I'll have a class at
Fourth week of
Treefort
March.
Music Hall at noon. You're gonna play for my class, all levels, yoga, and then right after that, you're gonna go into a performance.
Yep.
So that's Sunday, March 30th. So come to Boise
Yep.
and enjoy that with us. And I think that's it.
And I'll be in Columbus, Ohio on the Equinox doing this ensemble ambient thing at the Art Museum with some other musicians. I'll be sitting in. I really don't know what to expect. It should be fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool for you.
Yeah. Well, all right. Keep walking. Check out MarisaRadhaWeppner.com, and we'll catch you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Peace.
Thanks to you too, Krish.